Let's take a look at checking the connection on a gator clip. Let's start by grabbing up our gator clip or a couple gator clips, and we will remove the protective sheath on the clip itself. Here you can see these same gator clips have the protective sheath removed from the clip itself. You can also see down inside where the wire connects to the actual clip. And if you notice, we can't actually see any of the uninsulated wire or the bare copper wire strands touching the actual gator clip itself. So that would mean that we won't have connectivity. So let's check connectivity on this cable. Here I have a basic multimeter. This is a Astro AI DM6000 AR. I have the positive terminal connected here, or the positive lead connected to input, and then my negative lead connected to the COM. And let's go ahead and turn this on. So I'll just turn the dial to the ohm reading here. And I also like to change my selection to where I get the audio icon up here. And we want that beep if we have good connectivity or conductivity from one end to the other of whatever we're measuring. If I just take the clips themselves and clip them onto the multimeter leads, connect that, connect this side. So we should be getting a beep right now, but we're not. Anytime you see OL, basically that just means that we don't have a good connection. So it's like a break in a pipe. The water's not flowing properly, or that connection. We're not getting conductivity. By looking at how that wire looks connected to the gator clip, it doesn't look like there's any exposed or conducting wire touching the clip. So we're gonna pull this apart and properly connect these. Now that we are going to open up the end of that clip where the wire is connected, I just wanted to take a minute and show you what tools that I have on hand just in case. So that's some needle nose pliers here. Then I actually have some small repair flathead screwdriver, and then also a little bit larger screwdriver just in case flathead, and then some wire strippers. All right, so now I have the end of the alligator clip where the wire connects, and you can see I'm kind of pinching that little metal fold with the pliers here, and I'm just going to pinch it just a little further. Hopefully I can kind of crack that open to where I can get a hold of them with the pliers here. I got the little metal clips opened up. You can see how they kind of point up straight now. And now you should be able to get that wire out. And yeah, if we look at this wire, you can see there's almost little to no conductive wire actually outside or uninsulated, so that it's making good contact with the clip. And then I don't know if you can see that, maybe I can zoom in, but it looks like there might even be a bit of a burn there. So there could have been a short and burned up some of that copper wiring there. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this wire and strip it and get some fresh wire out of that. All right, so here's a look at the wire. So you can see where at the gator clips wrap around the wire right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably cut this just a little bit away from that so that I have fresh wire and I'm not including damaged wire inside of the new connection. So you can go ahead and probably come down like a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, and then cut there. Here we have the freshly cut wire, and now I will go ahead and strip this wire, probably about a good 1/2 inch here, because we're gonna take that conductive wire and we're gonna wrap it through these holes here to make sure that we have a good connection. All right, you can see just how small it is, incredibly small. There's only a few strands in there, and you can see there's a lot of insulation going on there. And again, I used a proper pair of wire strippers here, and you can see that this particular set even has the measurement on there. And I used the 16 gauge there on the far left just to make sure it wasn't clipping any of the conductive wire. And that hole is actually larger than the amount of wire that's in that insulation. All right, I don't know if you can see this, but Basically what I did is I came from inside the clip up at the hole that is nearest the gripping end of the clip here. And then from the inside underneath, I came in and up and out through that first hole. And then I looped it down into that second hole in the middle and then pulled it through and then went back up and under the last hole on the far right there. Came back up and over and then went back down in the middle. So you can see there's, maybe 8 to 10 strands sitting in there. And I'll kind of clean the end of those strands up. And before you run the wire through, go ahead and give it, a few twists. And then what I will do is I'll actually end up folding this back through up over it to help secure the existing wire underneath before I pinch those metal clips back over the wire. You can see I run the wire back through the back of the clip now to fit into those metal folds on the gator clip on the rear there. And then you can see I pinch them back down nice and tight, but not too tight. And you might see a couple wires hanging out there, but that's going to be okay because we're going to have the protective insulation cover over the gator clip. In order to get the protective insulation back over the clip, sometimes it's kind of hard because this is a tight fit. So trying to squeeze this and then trying to get this cover over it is kind of difficult. So what I like to do is just grab onto one of the other clips like this, and then you can basically feed through there. And I'm doing this with one hand while I hold the camera, but yeah. So there you go, one-handed. And then you can see how the protective insulation covers that just fine. But if you can fold those little frayed wires back underneath to where they get a nice secure mount under those metal clips, that's actually better. Because you don't want any metal coming out from underneath this protective cover to shock you, depending on what you're working with. All right, let's move on to the next side. On the other side, we can see that there are actually a few strands of wire hanging out there. So this side might have been conducting well enough. It was most likely the other side that was causing the issue, making it to where we had no continuity there. So I'll go ahead and strip this now, and then we'll run this. Yeah, and actually I did go ahead and cut this wire, and I cut it down just about 1/8 of an inch below where the folded metal mounts were on the gator clips so that we have a nice clean fresh wire. And now we'll strip this. Here we can see the strands of copper wire, and I'm going to go ahead and twist these. And what I mean by twisting, since I didn't show you with the other one, I'll try to do this with one hand here, but basically you're going to take and just twist like this. But you can see how they're kind of spread out on their own. I will twist those and show you what it looks like after. You can see here what they look like when they are twisted together. You can see there's no frayed ends there where there's no individual copper strands. And also, just to show you the steps here, so you can see I'm running the end of the wire up inside of the clip through the hole closest to the gripping end. And then you can see I ran that little loop up through it and then down through the center hole with the copper wire. And then now I'm going to take that and run it back up to that far right hole there. Yeah, and once again, you see where the wire starts on the far left, comes up through that hole, down through the middle hole, curls back around up and through the far right hole. And then I'm going to pull that all the way through, and I'll probably run it back down the middle, and I will terminate it or end it on the inside of the clip. That way, when I pull this black wire back that way, pointing that way, and then I close those clips, everything will be nice and tight in there. And then now you can see that I ran the cable backwards away from the gripper end and then crimped that little metal wing on the back to hold it nice and secure. And then you can see I didn't over crimp. I'm not that's not gripping it so tight that it's gonna cause a cut in the insulation or anything. It's just holding it just tight enough to where it's not gonna pull away from each other if they're tugged. And then now we can put this back together and check the continuity, and hopefully we get that positive beep. We have both gator clips attached to the leads of the multimeter. And also notice that these are not directly touching one another, so you want to keep that open like that. And back on the multimeter, you can see that I'm on the ohm setting, and then I would always make sure that the sound notification is on. On this one, you have to press select, and we get that beep. So we've got good continuity in there. That means that this wire is good and it's conducting properly. A main reason you want to do this and check your gear that you use is because you can end up spending a lot of time, especially if you're on a complex project, chasing down a connection in the project itself when it's faulty gear like this. So I like to always run this check on all my cables, even if it's the cables for multimeter. So if you have another multimeter to check your cables, I like to check everything as far as gear, even breadboards. If you're prototyping with breadboards, it's also great to just do a rough check on those. Maybe run a 9-volt from the uh, positive to the negative on both ends, and then check the pinholes because, man, it's really super painful if your gear doesn't check out and you're in the middle of a project. Thanks for watching.